Hey, what up, YouTube? Welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. It is part two of this mini series, I suppose you could kind of call it, of why each football club is nicknamed what they're nicknamed. We're looking at League One and League Two today. There's some really wild ones, especially Pompey. There's a lot of theories on that one, so I've only selected three, I think it was, out of a possible 9 or 10. But let's start with Accrington Stanley. Well, they're nicknamed Stanley, but why are they named Stanley? Well, the club were originally formed as Stanley Villa, so they were named as the they were so named as the number of the team lived in Stanley Street, which is a street in the town, and the club was renamed Accrington Stanley in 1894, although it later folded and re-established, but they still stuck with the old name. AFC Wimbledon, the Dons. The first of the Dons today, well, that nickname is derived from the word Wimbledon, and that's where they play, so, fairly obvious that one. Bolton Wanderers, the Trotters. Falling into roughly two schools of thought, the first is rather literal. There are two main reasons why they're called the Trotters. Pig or sheep trotters are a famously Lancastrian delicacy, and it has been claimed they were fed to the team as part of their pre-match meal by a butcher based near Burnden Park, who used to pile them up in his shop window prior to match days. They also feature in the belief that Wanderers are called the Trotters because the club's base at Pikes Lane used to be situated next to a pig farm. The alternative theory, of which a lot more people in Bolton subscribe, not least the club's historian Simon Marland, is the word trotter is a colloquial phrase which means practical joker. Long before Peter Kay, Paddy McGuinness, and Dave Spikey, Boltonians were apparently known for their fondness for public pranks. Trotting, as it was known, was encapsulated in a painting which used to hang on the wall of a Swan pub, in which a Bolton man challenged a visitor to the town for a wager that he could keep his leg in a bucket of hot water for longer, and did so easily before it was discovered that he had a wooden leg. The term was applied to people from the whole town, and so it seems entirely likely it caught on with a football team. Probably subscribe to that theory, to be fair. Burn Albion, the Brewers. The club's nickname, the Brewers, evokes the brewing heritage of Burton-upon-Trent, with Marston's, now part of Carlsberg, being made in the town. Cambridge United are nicknamed just United. The club was founded in 1912 as Abbey United and took the name Cambridge United in 1951. So they just chopped the prefix of the name off, really. Not that interesting. Charlton Athletic, the Addicks. Charlton have had a number of preferred nicknames over years, including the Valiants and the Robins, but the Addicks is the one that has stuck. Certainly one of the more unusual football nicknames, shall we say. It can be traced back to the club's formative years, and more specifically, back to East Street, where the club was formed. It was there that a fishmonger's was located, which was owned by Arthur Bryan. Bryan supplied haddock and chips to players from both sides after Charlton's matches, and with the South London linguistics coming into play, that became haddock and chips. And thus the Addicks, or Haddocks, nickname was born. Cheltenham Town, the Robins. The robin is known in the animal kingdom as one of the most fiercest defenders of its home territory. That and the red and white kit explains the name. Crew Alexandra, the Railwaymen. So named because of the town's connection to the railway industry, but also that local railway works owned a pub called the Alexandra, which in turn was named after Princess Alexandra of Denmark, wife of King Edward VII, of which they constructed the Alexandra Recreation Ground where Crew played. Doncaster Rovers, the Vikings. In the late 60s, the local council denied Doncaster Rovers the prolonged use of its civic icon. A competition was held, and the best design selected was today's badge, christened the Viking. It was designed by a group of local students, and one may assume that the undaunted Scandinavian alludes to the rover's suffix. Fleetwood Town, the Cod Army. The Cod Army nickname is basically a strong prompt back to the links of the fishing industry of a Lancashire coastal town. The club supporters are also referred to as the Cod Army, alongside the club itself. Gillingham, the Gills. Only named after what was then the modest settlement of Gillingham in 1912. Ipswich Town, the Tractor Boys. The nickname of the East Anglian side pays tribute to the agriculture of the area, which has been a mainstay of the local economy for some time. The club's badge has also featured a Suffolk Punch white horse playing with a football, again paying tribute to the farming industry. Another string to the naming of Tractor Boys is that Ipswich derby against bitter rivals Norwich is known perhaps comically as the Old Farm Derby. Lincoln City, the Imps. Taken from a medieval carving of a Lincolnshire imp who appears as a mischievous little devil on a pillar inside the Lincoln Cathedral. There are well-known folk tales of the imp as it is a well-established association with the county. Milton Keynes Dons, the Dons. This is because the Dons nickname is derived from the word Wimbledon, which is controversial for many Wimbledon fans because they think that it is a thinly veiled attempt to claim a part of the heritage of the original club. Given that when MK Dons were first launched, they claimed Wimbledon's playing legacy, it led to the relocated club taking on their nickname. I'm not going to be embroiled in the politics of it all, but you can certainly look at the history of your clubs of both AFC Wimbledon's and MK Dons if you want to find out more about it. Morecambe, the Shrimps. Nicknamed the Shrimps due to the coastal town's local speciality food and that they are located on the Lancashire coast. Oxford United, the Yellows. They initially played in orange and blue shirts, but later changed to yellow home shirts for the 1957-58 season. Although the reason for the change is unknown, this is why they are referred to as the Yellows, and encourage songs at home games such as the Beatles' Yellow Submarine with adapted lyrics. Plymouth Argyle, the Pilgrims. The club is called the Pilgrims because the people that left Plymouth, America, were called the Pilgrims. The ship on the badge is called the Mayflower, and the first pilgrims travelled on the Mayflower. Portsmouth, Pompey. The theory is that Portsmouth football team were formed from the team of the Royal Artillery, who were the original Pompeys. The name was acquired in this way at a Queen's birthday review, in which the Royal Artillery were employed to line the parade instead of marching past. They were chaffed a good deal at being relegated to a job which was in then days only done in Paris by the fire brigade, which in French is Les Pompiers. And the next time a team turned out, they were hailed as Pompiers, and the name stuck. Or there's another theory that in 1781, some of Portsmouth sailors climbed Pompey's pillar near Alexandria and became known as the Pompey Boys. The pomp and ceremony connected with the Royal Navy at Portsmouth led to the adoption of the nickname Pompey, derived from the old word for louse, implying that Chatham Mountain ships were lousy. So you take your pick. Rotherham United, the Millers. The nickname is a representation of a town's flour mills and a windmill which once stood close to the Millmore ground, which is also a potential reason they are nicknamed the Millers. Sheffield Wednesday, the Owls. Well, for starters, the club moved from Olive Grove to the Sheffield district of Owlerton, where they still play today ever since they moved in 1899. Then in 1912, Wednesday player George Robertson presented the club with an owl mascot, and the name began to take hold. Monkey mascot was introduced earlier, but had not brought much luck. And interestingly, owls of Owlerton have absolutely nothing to do with the bird. Owls or owler is an old Yorkshire word for an alder tree, which is found in various woodland areas of Sheffield. So perhaps they should have been named the Alders instead. Shrewsbury Town, the Shrews. They were originally known as Salop after the name of the county, and with Shrewsbury being the county town of Shropshire, previously known as Salopshire, this nickname continued until 1986, when a shrew cartoon appeared and was placed on the club crest, and it eventually surpassed Salop as a nickname. Sunderland, the Black Cats. Sunderland's official nickname is the Black Cats, and the name was made official in a public vote in 2000. Despite the nickname being made only official only relatively recently, the Black Cat has been used as an emblem of the club throughout most of its history. Photographs exist of players holding a black cat, which made Roker Park its home in the 1900s and 1910s, and which was fed and watered by the football club. The club's first official badge featured a black cat sitting prominently in its centre, and since the 1960s, the emblem of the Sunderland AFC Supporters Association has been a black cat. A Sunderland supporter, Billy Morris, took a black cat in his chest pocket as a good luck charm to the 1937 FA Cup final, in which Sunderland brought home the trophy for the first time, and reference has also been made to a Black Cat battery, which is an artillery battery based on the River Wear during the Napoleonic Wars. Wigan Athletic, the Latics. A fairly obvious reason with Wigan's nickname is the Latics, which is inspired by the local pronunciation of the suffix athletic. Wycombe Wanderers, the Chairboys. Wycombe are called the Chairboys because of its tradition of chair making in the town of High Wycombe. The nickname was used in the early days of the club, but was only resurrected after the 1980s fanzine Chairboys Gas dug out the name from the history books. Barrow, the Bluebirds. Barrow started life as a league club in 1921, when they were voted into the newly formed 3rd Division North. They kicked off their campaign in their new colours of royal blue shirts with white shorts, which inspired their nickname, the Bluebirds. Bradford City, the Bantams. Bradford City's Bantams identity arose from the suggested resemblance of their claret and amber colours to the plumage of bantams. There was no objection to being associated with the small but fearless fighting creatures, and the nickname was encouraged by the club. Bristol Rovers will go with the Gas, because the Pirates one derives from the Bristolian accent being a bit like a pirate's accent. The local nickname of the club, though, is the Gas, and that is derived from the gasworks next to their former home, the Eastville Stadium. This actually started off as a derogatory term used by their fans of their main rivals, Bristol City. But, well, if you can't beat them, then join them, and was affectionately adopted by the club and its supporters. That certainly turned a derogatory phase on its head, didn't it? Carlisle United, the Cumbrians. Since Carlisle is located in Cumbria, and the nickname Cumbrians will come as no surprise, and their colours reflect the club's other nickname, the Blues. Pretty boring. Colchester United, the U's. United adopted the nickname the U's to distinguish themselves from the Oysters of Colchester Town. The popularity of United finally spelt the end, you see, for Colchester Town. Crawley Town, the Red Devils. They are nicknamed the Reds or Red Devils due to the colour of their kits, and I don't think it was any inspiration gained from Manchester United, although it could have been. Exeter City, the Grecians or the Grecians. Many think that it is to do with the city's Roman history, but there are several theories as to where the Grecians came from. To this day, many are unsure where the nickname came from, but according to Exeter Past, a book by Hazel Harvey, it comes from a fair in the southern area of the city in 1726. For some obscure reason, the siege of Troy was reenacted at the fair, which led to the idea that those who lived within in the part of the city should play the Trojans, and those outside should play the Greeks. So those who lived in the St. Sidwell's area of Exeter identified themselves with Greeks, or Grecians, because they lived outside the old walls of the city. Then a few years later, football matches between the St. Sidwells and the City Dwellers, or the Blues, began, and so they were just known as the Grecians. Bit odd. Forest Green Rovers, the Lawn Mowers. This is an unofficial nickname for the Gloucestershire club, and it's pulled from the name of the club's old anchor grounds. The old ground was called the Lawn, and the current ground is called the New Lawn Stadium. And so it doesn't take much more imagination to then come up with lawn mowers as a nickname for the club. Harrogate Town, Sulphurites. The club played in amber and black and were nicknamed the Sulphurites by supporters because Harrogate is a spa town with sulphur water. The dictionary states sulphur, you see, as a pale yellow, non-metallic element used in black gunpowder, which is perfect, really, for today's colours. Hartlepool United, this is one of my favourite ones, the Monkey Hangers. Legend has it that during the Napoleonic Wars of the early 19th century, a shipwrecked monkey was hanged by the people of Hartlepool, who believed him to be a French spy. And to this day, people from Hartlepool are affectionately known as monkey hangers. Well, a French ship, you see, was spotted floundering and sinking off the Hartlepool coast. And suspicious of enemy ships and nervous of possible invasion, the good folk of Hartlepool rushed down to the beach, where amongst the wreckage of the ship they found the only survivor, the ship's monkey, which is apparently dressed in a miniature military style uniform. Well, Hartlepool is a long way from France, and most of the populace have never met or ever even seen a Frenchman. So satirical cartoons of the time pictured the French as a monkey-like creatures with tails and claws. So perhaps the locals could be forgiven for deciding that the monkey in its uniform must have been a Frenchman, and a French spy at that. There was a trial to ascertain whether the monkey was guilty of spying or not. However, not unsurprisingly, the monkey was unable to answer any of the court's questions and was found guilty. The townsfolk then dragged him into the town square and hanged him. There could perhaps be a darker side to the tale, though, and maybe they didn't actually hang a monkey, but a small boy or powder monkey. Small boys were employed on warships on this time to prime the cannons with gunpowder, and were known as powder monkeys. Over the centuries, the legend has been used to taunt the residents of Hartlepool. Indeed, still today, at football matches between local rivals Darlington and Hartlepool United, the chant "Who hung the monkey" can often be heard. Most Hartlepoolians, however, love this story, and Hartlepool United's mascot is a monkey called Hangus the Monkey. The successful mayor candidate in the 2002 local elections, Stuart Drummond, campaigned dressed in a costume of Hangus the Monkey, using the election slogan, "Free bananas for school children," a promise unfortunately he wasn't able to keep. However, this appears not to have dented his popularity, as he went on to be re-elected 2 more times. Leyton Orient, the O's. 12 history books written on the club by the historian Nielsen N. Kaufman between 1974 and 2015 suggest that the choice of the name Orient came about at the behest of the player Jack R. Deering, who was an employee at the Orient Steam Navigation Company, later part of P&O Peninsula and Oriental, obviously being in the news recently for their shocking dismissal of a lot of British employees with cheaper labour. And see, the club's name was changed again to Clapton Orient in 1898 to represent the area of London in which they played. Though there was another team named Clapton, but the Orient part was shortened down to the O's. So simple enough. Mansfield Town, the Stags. Mansfield Town have been nicknamed the Stags since the 1920s, after the small deer often found in the Sherwood Forest nearby. Newport County, the Exiles. Newport County, well, the original one, went out of business in 1989, and from their nucleus, Newport AFC arose. The badge was changed accordingly, and it shows the Newport Transporter Bridge, which was a famous local still is, I think, a famous local landmark. And it was set against an amber background, with the appropriate addition, the Exiles. A tag obtained as a result of a need to play at their inaugural season in the North Gloucestershire town of Morton in Marsh, at which venue they won the Hellenic Cup and League Double, winning promotion to the Southern League. Northampton Town, the Cobblers. The town's shoe manufacturing industry gave rise to the nickname the Cobblers. Northampton was the world capital of shoemaking, and it must have been a great sight seeing everyone in the town walking around in diamond encrusted golf shoes, fashionable shiny boots, or blue suede shoes. Or maybe claret, for those are, of course, the club's colours. Oldham Athletic, the Latics. The exact same reason that Wigan is the northern slang shortened version of athletic. Port Vale, the Valiants. In fact, the Valiants nickname may actually have never came about if it wasn't for the efforts of a local newspaper, the Sentinel, now the Staffordshire Sentinel. And they had not been in vain, really. They did definitely try. You see, in 1917, the Wanderer, the pen name of the sports correspondent of the Sentinel, started a campaign to name the club the Colliers. During World War One, many nicknames had taken off and were mostly connected with the occupations of the club's players. As many of Vale's team worked at Shelton Colliery, the Wanderer tried in vain to get the club to use that nickname. For instance, ahead of the 1918-19 season, the Wanderer wrote in the Sentinel, "The Colliers are a much better team than last season." This reference to the Colliers continued until 1919, when Port Vale president William Huntbatch decided to launch his own nickname campaign with far greater success. At this point, Vale had taken over the fixtures of Leeds City in the Football League. Against a backdrop of club money being used to find urgent stadium improvements, key players leaving, and the sudden switch from non-league to league opposition, Vale did well to hold their own and record their first league win in November. Days after the victory, club president Huntbatch told a supporters meeting that the club should have a nickname, and that it should be the Valiants, as the club have already lived up to that name. This time the nickname stuck and fans adopted it, and the Valiant's nickname has remained with Port Vale from 1919 onwards. Rochdale, the Dale. Just because it's a shortened version of the name Rochdale, which is so called after the Cumbrian word area around the River Roch, which is named after the kingdom known as South Regent. Salford City, the Ammies. The club's nickname, the Ammies, stems from their name from the early 1960s to the early 1970s of Salford amateurs. Scunthorpe United, the Iron. Ever since the club has entered the league, their nickname has been the Iron, as the metal has played a long role in the team's nomenclature. Before the 1950s, Scunthorpe United were known as the Nuts. The origin is uncertain, but it is generally accepted as being when they won one of the local charity cups. The vicar of Frodingham, the Rev. Crispant Rust, said that indeed Scunthorpe and Lindsay United were a tough nut to beat. It stuck from the 1910-ish to about 1950 before becoming the Iron. Stevenage, the Borough. Stevenage Borough Council granted consent for the club to incorporate the name Borough in their title and to adopt the town's civic emblem as the club badge. But in 1980, the council required the lease for the board all away and allowed the football club to become its tenant, but it's since dropped the borough part and the civic emblem, I suppose you could call it. Sutton United, the Amber and Chocolates. Sons of the kit colours of yellow and brown, but amber and chocolate sounds much sweeter and nicer. Swindon Town, the Robins. The nickname of Robins, of course, reflects the club's colours, but Swindon Town has also been known as the Railwaymen, dating back to the time when Swindon was a very big railway centre with the Great Western Railway Works, at its height in the mid-60s. But what about the Moonrakers tag then? This is one of my favourite little stories. Well, it originates from an old legend, you see. A couple of centuries ago, on a moonlit night, two men from the village of Bishop's Canning in Wiltshire were busy carrying home smuggled brandy or moonshine in the back of a hay cart. As they passed the village pond, they heard the sound of an approaching excise man, which was like the equivalent to the police of them days. Thinking quickly, they dumped the barrels into the pond and began raking the surface of the water with their hay rakes. "What in the world are you two up to?" asked the excise man. "We are raking for cheese," replied one man. "Can't you see one?" added the other, pointing to the reflection of the moon. The exciseman burst out laughing and hurried off back to tell his colleagues they had seen two drunken country bumpkins who thought that the reflection of the moon was a cheese. After he had gone, the two men used their rakes to retrieve the brandy and continued on their way. Since then, Wiltshire people have been known as Moonrakers. Tranmere Rovers Super White Army. It's not racist, as the FA seem to think. No, it's a reference to the team's colours being predominantly white. There was a bit of a scandal last year when fans were allowed with a banner Super White Army, which was blocked by the FA. Walsall, the Saddlers. In their earliest days, Walsall were called the Swifts, but the subsequent Saddlers, after the leather manufacturing industry in the area nearby, has stuck to the present day. In contrast, the swift and full flight, rather than the image of a saddler, has been a symbol of the club badge ever since 1888. In 1995, Walsall broke with a long tradition when the club badge was altered so that the bird no longer pointed down but up. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you're new around here. That would be hugely appreciated. On Monday, we've got a history of your club of Sunderland. Very big club, of course, that one. And I will do the final part of this on Friday, hopefully. But goodbye for now.